Good evening. I'm Angie Mock, the publisher and CEO of the San Antonio Report. Thank you for being here. Again, welcome, welcome. Please take your seats as soon as you can. Before we get started tonight, we want to take a moment to reflect on the 19 children and 2 adults who lost their lives a year ago today at Robb Elementary in Uvalde in the deadliest mass shooting ever at a Texas public school. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you for joining us in that recognition. At the San Antonio Report, civic engagement is the core of who we are. Debates, forums, panel discussions that we do throughout the year, we host those and they're all aimed at getting this community engaged in the local political process. So when the May 6th City Council races led to 2 very exciting runoff elections, runoff races in District 1 and District 7, we just jumped at the chance to hold these essential conversations tonight. And thank you all. Many of you submitted questions, and I think you'll hear some of those really great questions in tonight's discussion and conversation. And we also want to thank our sponsors, our presenting sponsors for tonight, AARP, Centro San Antonio, and Weston Urban. And here to kick us off is Weston Urban's co-founder and CEO, Randy Smith.
Thank you, Angie. I'm Marina Smith. Just real quick, so we can know our audience tonight, by show of hands, who lives in District 1? All right, I guess the D7 people are coming later. Does anybody live in District 7? All right, thank you. Hey, when Angie told me that I only had 2 minutes, I had a good laugh about that, and then I thought about what I might say. And I will be pithy. You did not come here tonight to listen to me. And the 4 people that have come here to share themselves with you are far more important. But look, I live and work in District 1, and this is important. I know you know it's important or you wouldn't be here, but your vote is your voice on the issues that we're facing. And I live in District 1, I work in District 1. In a lot of ways, District 1 is a hot mess. I visit District 7 at least 3 times a week. It has its own issues. And these are complex issues, and all of us, by part of this process, are here to hear from the voices that could be your voice on council. And so thank you for being here. And lastly, I just want to thank the candidates. There are a lot of people that talk about doing things, and there are very few people that actually do things. And no matter who you support, the 4 people that you're hearing from tonight are doers. The shoe leather that they've put in to get to this point, the grit, the time, and the energy is just to be commended. And so to Sukh, to Mario, to Marina, to Dan, they are all to be thanked and committed for being here to share themselves with you. So enjoy tonight. I hope it's informative for you, and thank you for being here.
Let's get started, but before we do, we have a couple of rules, really important rules. So just really 2. Please hold your applause until the end of the debate. If you applaud when your candidate says something really brilliant every time, and they will not make it to maybe half of the questions that we have planned. So please hold your applause until the end of the debate. And the second one is no excessive cheering or celebration is going to be allowed. Just please be respectful. We really don't want to have to escort anyone out of here. We want to stay on time. We have a solid 45, 50 minutes for each debate, and we want to really hear from the candidates. So with that said, I'd like to turn over the stage to our amazing government and politics reporter, Andrea Drush. She's our moderator, and she will introduce the District 1 candidates. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, thanks so much for being here. I'm Andrea Drush, and I cover local politics for the San Antonio Report. We know citywide that interest in these municipal elections leaves something to be desired, but we know that the San Antonio Report readers in this room have cared a lot about these races and these candidates. We want to thank you for your interest in local government and your curiosity about these races. Thank you for sharing the information that you find useful and the stories that you read with your friends and neighbors. We have a lot of questions for these candidates tonight, so we're going to get right to it. As I introduce the candidates, they can take the stage. Councilman Mario Bravo was a project manager for the Environmental Defense Fund before winning a seat on the City Council in 2021. He's a Clark High School graduate who earned a master's degree from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas. He was born in Laredo and now lives in the Deco District. Dr. Sukh Kaur runs her own education consulting company, Ed Reimagined, which helps schools implement charter programs. She grew up in Maryland, attended Rice University in Houston, participated in Teach for America before moving to San Antonio in 2017. She's also a yoga instructor and a realtor who lives in the Beacon Hill neighborhood. We want to take a couple seconds to go over the ground rules for the candidates. This is going to be a 45-minute debate, and you will each have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. If you get a follow-up from the moderator, you get 1 minute to answer that. And if there's a rebuttal that needs to happen, you get 1 minute for that too. Audience, you know your ground rules, but worth repeating: no cheering, no booing. Angie will kick you out. Before this, we did a coin flip in the back, and Dr. Carr won. She gets to decide, or she decided that she wanted to go second in the opening statements. So, Councilman Bravo, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to give your opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Mario Bravo, and I've had the honor of serving as your District 1 council member for the last 2 years. And I'm here to ask for us to continue the partnership where we've worked so well together. I want to thank you all for your moment of silence earlier, honoring those that we lost in Uvalde a year ago. It was a tragic incident, a hard day for all of us, and even harder because of the fact that too many of our leaders haven't taken action to make us safer. But I want you to know that I stand in solidarity with them, and we are flying the District 1 field office flags at half staff today. My family, I grew up here in San Antonio. My family moved here in 1984 when I was in the 3rd grade. I attended all public schools. I went to Lock Hill Elementary, Rudder Middle School, Clark High School, and I'm a proud product of the public school system. I'm a big supporter of the public school system. My mom was also a public school educator, and she actually retired not too long ago as a librarian in the SAISD school system. I went on to the University of Texas at Austin and got a bachelor's degree in history, and then a master's degree in public affairs from the LBJ School of Public Affairs. So I studied public policy, and that's part of my passion for this role here, is to be able to work with you to solve our biggest challenges. And I also did work as a community advocate, and that's where I got my community organizing skills, and that's why I love being able to partner with you because of
Yeah, so you're at the minute 30. Yeah.
Was there going to be a clock here?
Oh, yes, sorry, it's over there.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Carr, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm so incredibly grateful for all of you who are in the audience, on video, and for the essay report for putting this together. And I stand up here knowing that 5,217 of you all have already voted for supporting my leadership for City Council in District 1, and for that, I am so incredibly humbled and grateful. For those of you I have not had the opportunity to meet, I'm a first-generation American, first-generation college student. I was born in India, so my first two languages were Punjabi and Hindi. When we immigrated to this country, my family actually started in the flea markets, and we focused on getting a high-quality education, which I realize now is not afforded to all. I graduated and went to Rice University and had the pleasure of studying political science and policy studies. And I actually decided to become a teacher. So I've been in the public education realm for 15 years. And what I've learned is that your zip code, the community that you are born in, should not be the determining factor for the economic opportunity and income that you can achieve in your life. And that's why I'm standing in front of you today. I'm also a small business owner, and so I understand finances and economic development and what that means for our city. And so I believe I bring both aspects to this race and to council. And so if I haven't gotten your vote yet, I promise I won't stop trying till I show you that I can truly be a great city councilwoman for District 1.
Thank you. Okay, first question, and we will go back and forth on the answers, but we will start with Councilman Bravo on this one first. District 1 was home to some of the most contentious turf wars during the 2022 city redistricting process. That included a fight from the downtown business community that wanted to stay in the district, and a push from the Greater Harmony Hills neighborhood, which is located north of 410, that wanted to stay out. The district now encompasses both the city's urban core and some of its suburban neighborhoods. What do you think are the most pressing needs of each of those constituencies? You have a minute now.
So, San Antonio is one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, and we need to grow with it, right? There's more people are moving here, and we need to build enough housing to be able to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a real affordable housing crisis. And so what that means for District 1 is, that means a lot of infill development. And so what happens is, developers will go and find empty parcels of land, and they may be next to your neighborhood, and they're gonna wanna bring a development there. And so the key is, how do you bring together get involved early on in the process, and bring together the neighborhoods and the developer, and find a way to get to yes, because we need developments, we need to grow with the city, but we also want to preserve the character of the neighborhoods. And even more so than that, what can we do that can be a value add? What can we do to make your neighborhood, wouldn't it be great if your favorite restaurant was within walking distance of your neighborhood, your favorite coffee shop? And so the key is bringing people together, finding the right fit for each neighborhood, because every neighborhood is unique. Downtown is a neighborhood. How do you make downtown more walkable? How do you make it more livable, more vibrant? But we can do that in every single neighborhood, but every single neighborhood is unique in its own way, and we want to preserve what you have, and we want to add value to it if we can. And that takes a lot of work getting involved in early on in the process, and just listening to all sides and negotiating so we can get to yes. I'm very proud that we've approved more zoning cases than anybody else in any city council district.
Good job. Actually, could we do 30 more seconds? Would you mind bullet pointing what you think are the top needs of the suburban communities and the urban core? Sorry, that's the root of this question, is what do you think are the most pressing needs of both the suburban areas and the urban core?
So the urban core, it's all about, how do we fill office space? How do we get more people to live downtown? How do we make sure that it's a livable, vibrant downtown? In the neighborhoods, it's preserving the quality of life, and that could be anything from sidewalks to having parks within walking distance to public safety. But at the end of the day, your priorities are my priorities.
Okay, and I'll read it again for Dr. Carr. District 1 was home to some of the most contentious turf wars during the 2022 city redistricting process. That included a fight from some downtown business communities that wanted to stay in the district, and a push from the Greater Harmony Hills neighborhood that wanted to stay out. The district now encompasses both the city's urban core as well as some more suburban neighborhoods. What do you think are the most pressing needs of each of these constituencies?
So I apologize in advance for chugging water, but we just got done walking, so I'm still a little dehydrated. But our campaign has knocked on over 11,000 doors now, and I have knocked on almost 4,000. And what we have heard is we've gone to every single one of those communities. We've gone to Greater Harmony Hills, Vance Jackson, and first and foremost, the issue, I would argue that a lot of the issues are the same but need to be modified. So first, communication. A lot of the folks in Greater Harmony Hills and Vance Jackson didn't even know they had been redistricted. I had folks tell me to my face, you're wasting your marketing dollars, we're actually District 9, but thank you for coming out here. And so there is first and foremost a communication issue that we need to address, and I would say that's true over in our entire district. And at the same time, each neighborhood, not just the urban core, as you may call it, or outside Loop 410. At one point, Greater Harmony Hills and the Vance Jackson Colonial Hills communities, those were suburbs and outside of the city district. And so I want all of those folks to know that we are all one. We are all District 1, and your voice matters. And so ensuring that the River Road community is getting to share their voice and opinion on Brackenridge Park, that the downtown community, which is the heart of economic development, still has a beautiful place to live, work, and play, and that my neighborhood, Beacon Hill, has some issues that are in infrastructure addressed, and that Central Los Angeles Heights have drainage issues that are so terrible, and those need to be addressed. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as council to get to the voters and hear what their issues are and address them.
Okay, and we're going to do a quick 1-minute follow-up on this question for both candidates, and you'll get 1 minute to answer it. But as a follow-up, I want to read you a quote from Chad Carey, the president of the North St. Mary's Business Owners Association, and give you each a minute to respond. He said in a recent interview, "A neighborhood is not simply the few homeowners who get to scream real loud because they have mortgages. It means business owners, it means people who work in those businesses, it means people that rent apartments and people who have jobs nearby. This seems particularly relevant in District 1, where the stakeholders in neighborhood issues are often both business owners, employees, and residents who aren't necessarily homeowners. How do you plan to balance the desires of the homeowners with the needs of everyone else who doesn't have a neighborhood association speaking on their behalf?" Councilman Bravo, you go first.
So you have to bring everybody together and you have to listen to all sides. And I'll tell you, we inherited some contentious issues over in Tobin Hill with the North St. Mary's Strip. And so what we did is we held town hall meetings with everybody. We held meetings with the neighborhood association, and then we actually held a town hall meeting with just bar owners and bar managers, and got buy-in from them on what the path forward was going to be like. And so that's what it takes. It takes listening to all sides, bringing people together, and trying to find consensus in a path forward.
And Dr. Carr, how do you plan to balance the desires of the homeowners with the needs of everyone else who doesn't have a neighborhood association speaking on their behalf?
So the first thing I think we need to do is rebuild trust. If you go down to the Strip, which we will be at on Sunday if anybody wants to join us, you will see that there is trust that has been broken. And folks there want the St. Mary's Strip to thrive. They didn't move to that neighborhood because they didn't want it there. And so we have to first and foremost come to the table and understand we all have the same end goal. It's how do we keep these businesses in business while at the same time not impacting the quality of life of the residents that live there. And then to the second part of your question, where there's neighborhoods that don't have an association, the best way to reach them is by actually going to them. And there are some that don't. And so figuring out the community centers where the folks actually congregate, going door to door, talking to neighbors, making yourself available is how you ensure you understand at City Council what the issues of your district are overall.
Thank you. Okay, second question. We have heard loud and clear over the past year that small business owners are struggling with construction projects, particularly ones downtown that have been delayed by the pandemic and other reasons. Should the city proceed as planned with improvements that residents have said they wanted, but that are harming local businesses in the meantime? And Dr. Carr, would you like to go first on this one with a minute and a half on the clock?
Can you repeat the last part of the question one more time?
Yeah, should the city proceed as planned with improvements that residents have said they wanted, but that are harming local businesses in the meantime?
So I think at the end of the day, infrastructure matters, right? Our city is going to double in size in the next 10 years, and we currently don't have the infrastructure that's necessary to increase in that population. So if our streets are broken, if our sidewalks aren't functioning, we can't actually inhabit all of that population. So I think it's important that we not stagnate growth. But I think what the root cause of this question is how we do that and how the development occurs. So let's make sure we're not doing Broadway and Avenue B at the same time. It's going to cause folks that have businesses there to not get any foot traffic. So I think the real solution to this is making sure we are strategically planning, and I know that's difficult when you're on a bond cycle of every 5 years and projects are getting put up, but at the same time, I think if we work closely and build collaborative relationships with our city, then we can understand the depth of projects that actually exist and make sure we are addressing them in a coordinated way and have someone on staff at the council office. This will be the first position I actually hire that oversees infrastructure. Because I've already been getting calls from folks saying, hey, there's a construction project on my street, can you tell me what's happening? Like, actually, no one's giving me access right now, but I'd love for someone to be able to know exactly who to call and get the response to that question, and that only comes if we're working together and building actually a plan of how this infrastructure changes and the construction growth will happen.
Okay, and along those lines, a follow-up for you. In addition to having your education nonprofit, you have a development in Southtown, and that has given some residents some pause. They're worried about handing over the keys of the city to a developer. If you're elected, do you plan to have other development projects, and how can you assure voters that city resources like the streets and bond projects will be prioritized to the people who need them throughout the district and not benefiting your personal interests?
So I don't know if Randy is still here, but I don't know if you would call one project that's a hobby project a developer, but I would like to think that I actually started something. And what I've really realized in this work is that too often the folks that are building for our community only look like a certain population. And it is our ability and voice to be able to actually grow the folks that are able to build generational wealth. And so real estate is a way that we can actually grow the assets that we have. If you've ever owned your home, that's an asset that has value that you can pass down from generations. And that's what I was trying to do with building a space that initially was going to be a yoga studio in Southtown. And hopefully it will, it's empty right now, but hopefully it will become something beautiful that the community can recognize. But at my heart, if you know that all of the work I have done is for underserved communities, we realize that as a woman of color, I'm not going to stand up there and just continue to allow voices that need the support not be heard, but at the same time, we can still help grow our community and our intergenerational wealth as well.
And yes, no, do you plan to take on other development projects?
At this time, no, we're still not finished with this one.
Okay. Councilman Bravo, do you want to repeat the question, or are you ready to go for more? Do you want the question repeated?
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful for that question because, when I first got into office, I inherited some really messy projects that were poorly managed. And I went and I fought for those business owners. And I asked for funds to help offset some of their losses, and city staff told me no. They told me no over and over and over again, but I didn't give up on those businesses. I kept fighting, and we delivered $5 million in small business in grants for those small businesses. Then what we did is we went and we passed a responsible bidders ordinance. We wanted to make sure that we can complete these projects on time and do a better job. But the problem was we always give the contracts to the low bidder, even if they do a sloppy job, even if they cut corners, even if they have project delays. And so we passed a responsible bidders ordinance that said, if you have poor performance history in the last 3 years, you are ineligible for bidding on city contract. So we took care of that. We can do a better job going forward. But then I wanted to do even more. So I drafted a policy, and I worked with my council colleagues, and I got them to sign on to it so we could submit it to the city clerk and bring it to council. The policy is, let's make sure that every time we do a city construction project, we have large daily fines for every day that they're late on completing that project. But let's also have large daily bonuses for every day that they're early, for early completion, so we can have big carrots, big sticks, and make sure we deliver projects on time so that we're protecting those businesses and their employees. In addition to that, I asked the city manager for more funding in 2024 to hire more staff to oversee all these construction projects, because we do have to do this work, but we need to get it done in a timely manner and be able to protect your tax dollar investments.
And as a follow-up to that, this grant program that you were instrumental in putting together, some of the loudest voices in the room say that they didn't receive the money. Do you think that that money was distributed fairly?
So it's true that some people didn't get the money, but initially I got an additional $10,000 for anybody who was impacted by construction delays, and I heard that the city staff made the restrictions, that made the criteria too strict. And I heard that, and I went back, and that's when I fought for more money, because at first it was about $1.3 million. Then we went, and I fought, and I fought, and I fought, and I finally got another $3.7 million. They haven't finished distributing it all, but I've talked to many people who've gotten up to $35,000, and we're still distributing it now.
What I'm asking is, did the people who complained the loudest, do you believe that they were specifically left out of this money?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it was, I made sure that city staff went and sat down with them and listen to why did they qualify, why did they not qualify, how do we need to adjust the criteria. Some people made more money, and so we can't offset your losses if you didn't lose money.
Thank you. On to our third question. This question was asked over and over by readers ahead of this forum. Do you believe that downtown is safe? sorry, do you believe downtown is safe? Please begin your answer with a yes or a no, and then use the rest of your time to explain why. Forgot which one more. Dr. Carr? Yeah, okay. Dr. Carr, you have a minute and 30 seconds.
So I do believe that downtown is safe. I do believe there's work that can be done to make it safer, but as someone who lived in, so I've actually lived in the city for over 7 years, and I lived in Southtown at the very beginning part of it, still District 1, but the end. And I was able to experience a lot of the challenges that some of our downtown homeowners are facing, or even residents. And the beauty of downtown is that you can live, work, play in it, and it's the hub of our economic development area, which is why downtown is every single council members. I've had some council members tell me we feel just as much ownership for it because it truly is the heart of San Antonio. And so I do understand there are some challenges that folks in that area have told me, specifically around the homeless population that are really traveling up and down and living on the Riverwalk. And most of them, I've had folks tell me that they give them food and water because a lot of them struggle with mental health issues. So do we have challenges? Absolutely. But I know our police force is working incredibly hard to make sure they are addressing our most violent crimes, which is what they need to be doing, and that we need to be hearing every issue that's coming up and addressing it. But there is work that we can do.
Councilman Bravo.
Downtown is safe. I walk downtown all the time. Can we do a better job? Absolutely. We just had, first of all, I'm a policy professional, and I've always told people, I told the San Antonio Police Officers Association when I first ran for this office, I said, if you ever bring me a study that shows that if we implement something, if it's evidence-based and it shows that if we implement a policy that it's going to make our city safer, I will back you up on that. And the city just had an evaluation done of what is the proper staffing level for our police department. And they looked at the workload that our city has, and they came back and they said they're short-staffed. And so the recommendation was that we budget to hire another 100 police officers for next year, and I've thrown my support behind that budget recommendation.
Thank you. Question number 4. Downtown has received major investments from the city over the past decade and a half, and creating downtown workforce housing has been a major priority for the city. But for many of the city's longtime residents, downtown can still be seen primarily as a place for tourists. In what ways do you think that downtown can and should change to become more welcoming to locals? Let's start with Councilman Bravo. You have a minute and a half.
So, if you care about tourism and you also care about making downtown, you care about making downtown great for locals. Because if you get locals living downtown and you can create great local experiences for them, that attracts high-end tourists. And so it's a win-win. And so we're really focused on what can we do to be able to activate spaces downtown, working with Centro San Antonio. What can we do to have more public art downtown, to have more events downtown, and then how can we make downtown more walkable? So we actually brought recently one of the most famous urban planners to San Antonio shortly after I got into office. And I got in the car with him and we drove him around downtown, and he looked at what we have and he said, San Antonio has an amazing patchwork of spaces. And what we need to do is we need to do a better job of tying them together. And so that's why I've been really focused on how can we make San Antonio the downtown more walkable, more bikeable, and just how can we tie these spaces together in a better way. And that's one of the reasons why I've been pushing for the city to hurry up and update their bicycle master plan, which hasn't been updated in over a decade.
Dr. Carr, in what ways do you think that downtown can and should change to become more welcoming to locals?
So one of the first things that you see if you've gone to downtown that's been updated now is Hemisphere Park. And if you've ever looked at Hemisphere Park, I think it is a beautiful representation of the diversity of our city. The park was built so intentionally, and there's a lot of different play areas for families. That's where I teach yoga at Energy Acts, and other folks in the crowd. There's places for you to eat, and it brings all types of people together. There's the Magic Theater there. And so I think creating areas like that are accessible for our low-income community and folks that are visiting or are more fluent folks is one of the ways that we can truly have people want to come there more. Second is when you do go, there's a challenge of parking. So figuring out a way that is not an inhibitor for why people don't want to come to that. And then third is supporting the arts. District 1, folks forget that it's the center of the arts. We have Tobin Center down there. We have a lot. We have the public theater just around the corner. And so I think it's important that we make sure that we support the arts.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we'll start with Dr. Kaur. What kind of development, if any, do you think the city should be incentivizing? You have a minute now.
So 2 things that I've heard from neighbors, and sometimes they seem contradictory, right? But the first is that people are being pushed out of their homes because their property taxes are rising, and they're the folks that built our community. And second, I even talked to the folks at AARPs. We don't have enough housing stock that's affordable to support the people that are coming in. So I think the reason why those 2 things sometimes seem contradictory is because when you do develop, folks feel like that if you just focus on new housing supply, that they're going to be pushed out of their homes. So I think the most important thing, if we are incentivizing, is making sure that any development that occurs is looking at the community, is ensuring that it's compatible and that it is going to add more affordable housing stock to our community that's accessible for all.
Thank you. Councilman Bravo, what kind of development, if any, do you think the city should be incentivizing?
Well, I think we need more housing at all price points. So we can incentivize housing at all price points. But I would say that we're never going to be able to solve our housing challenges just by incentivizing them. We need to remove more barriers to housing. And one concept that I really like, and I've had a group working with me on this, is how do we remove barriers to ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units? So these are backyard apartments, right? So many people have backyards that they're not using for anything, and you could have an apartment there that you could be income generating for you, or it could be a place if you have a 2-story house. And later in life, you want to age out in your neighborhood, but you don't want to have to go up and down the stairs. It might be more appropriate for you to move into the apartment in your backyard. You could build something there, and you could rent out the front house. There's a lot of options there. But the bottom line is we need to make it easier for people to build in San Antonio because we can't get the job done just by incentivizing housing.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Last summer, the city opened a migrant resource center in Shearer Hills amid some complaints from residents and business owners nearby. The city's lease on that property could last as long as 10 years. As the District 1 councilperson in a post-Title 42 world, how would you use your position to make the city's migrant aid efforts less disruptive to residents in your district? And we'll start with Dr. Kaur. You have a minute and 30 seconds. Sure.
So I wouldn't be standing in front of you today if I didn't have the opportunity to come to this country. And there are some of our folks that in the audience that I know have the same background. So I believe that San Antonio, nosotros somos una ciudad de inmigrantes. And for this reason, we have to do whatever we need to help them when they are coming to the community. But that means not that we just place a center without talking to the neighbors around it and actually getting their opinion or hearing how their quality of life will change. And so we must make sure that as we address if there is going to be an influx, 1, we have a space or a plan B for them. Because right now, our current center is already at capacity. And 2, when thinking about what that plan B is really talking to the community that we would be impacting and ensuring that they understand the work that's happening, that it's a center for them to get resources and move on, in that we have a plan to actually receive federal funding for the work that we are doing, because that was the essential component of the one that was launched. So those are some of the things that I would make sure.
Councilman Bravo, as the District 1 councilperson in a post-Title 42 world, how would you use your position to make the city's migrant aid efforts less disruptive to residents in your district?
So first of all, I want you to know that before I was a council member, we opened a migrant resource center before COVID downtown, and I volunteered at that migrant resource center. And then when we had to open one once I was a council member, I supported the opening of that migrant resource center. We needed to do it. It was the right thing to do. And I'll tell you, the problem is that our federal government will not address immigration the way they need to do it. So we did open it. We didn't have any heads up on that we were getting, all of a sudden the federal government was going to allow triple or quadruple the amount of migrants who are coming up here. So I did support the opening of it. And there are times where, and we put it in the location where we did now, because most of the people who were coming this time were flying to their final destination. Most of them are going to Chicago, they're going to New York, they're going to Miami. We're not operating a shelter. We're operating a transportation hub. This is a place for people to stay for just a few days while we make sure that they have their plane ticket, make sure they have their bus ticket, make sure they end up going to wherever, they don't miss that and they can get to wherever they're going. But, you know, this Migrant Resource Center has exceeded capacity multiple times, and that's why I have supported us going to the county, and we've already started conversations about trying to find a location, a larger location with the county that will be able to handle any potentially larger influxes of migrants going forward, because we can't count on the federal government to be able to solve this problem.
And quick, one more minute on the clock. What sort of response have you received from those inquiries about moving the center?
Well, I mean, the city and county have been in conversations on it.
Okay, they suggested that they would.
I'm not able to disclose where that is right now, but I can say that the conversations, they've been receptive, is my understanding.
Okay, and Dr. Carr, the city of San Antonio is committed to this compassionate response to helping migrants who arrive here, regardless of what's happening at the state or federal level. What do you think the city's role should be in helping migrants, if any?
So at the very least, we need to have a plan, because they are coming into our community, and so we need to have somewhere for them to go, or they'll just be on the streets. And so I think it is our responsibility to have a plan to offer them resources and the support that they need to then go on to their final destination.
Thank you. Okay, so our final question before we get to some special questions. The previous District 1 councilperson was very involved in the Alamo redevelopment. Could you give us a brief overview of what you think the redevelopment should include and what the role of the District 1 councilperson should play in that, including should it include the use of eminent domain? And start with Councilman Bravo, you have a minute and a half.
So, you know, I made the decision when I ran for council, before I got into council, that I was going to get out of the way of the Alamo redevelopment. You know, the truth is, the Alamo is in District 1, but it doesn't belong to District 1. It doesn't belong just to San Antonio. It belongs to all of the state of Texas. And so this was a partnership. You know, Alamo Plaza is owned by the city of San Antonio, but I made that decision. I'm going to get out of their way, and I told them I will support them where they need support, and I'm happy to do that. You know, my understanding is that the gentleman who owns Moses Roses was offered another property right across the street that was actually explained to me as an improvement over what he had, because it was actually facing the Alamo, whereas his was not. And my understanding was that he was not willing to negotiate, and so we were asked as a full council to be able to provide the tools for the city to bring into the negotiation table, and the council supported it.
So that's a yes on the use of eminent domain?
I did vote for it.
Okay. And Dr. Carr, could you give us a brief overview of what you think the Alamo redevelopment should include and what your role would be in that as a council person?
Our city is such a diverse city and has such a history that's complicated. And oftentimes one of the ways to share that history is by remembering our civil rights movement. Today I had the brilliant opportunity to go to a conference at Edgewood ISD that was honoring all of our multilingual speakers. And we have a huge influx of actually Burmese families that are coming. And so I think it's the responsibility of our city to make sure that we are honoring all of the diversity that is represented in our communities. And so in this instance, I think it was okay for us to use eminent domain to celebrate the civil rights and to celebrate all of the activism that our city has led. And in that, during listening to those speeches, there was a teacher and her niece that spoke. And she told such a beautiful story about her background experiencing segregation and the challenges she's now having to share some of those stories in schools. And so as a city, we can at least create a space that allows for them to feel like they belong and that their story hasn't been lost.
Thank you. We're actually doing so well on time that we're going to do a bonus question before we get to our special questions. The city has spent a lot of money trying to address homelessness in recent years, and yet the latest point-in-time count shows the number of homeless families in Bexar County is up 28% compared to 2022. Does the city need to rethink its approach to addressing homelessness or allow solutions more time to take effect? And we'll start with Councilman Bravo. We have a minute and a half.
Thank you. I'm really glad you asked this question. You know, I'm proud of the progress that we have made on this issue in my first term, and I want you to know that you're going to start to see the results of that progress soon. So what we are doing right now is we are supporting the model of permanent supportive housing. And what that is it's a recognition that there's a subset of people who are homeless, who are chronically homeless, right? These individuals likely have mental health issues. They are unlikely to be able to hold a job and feed them or house themselves, right? And so we're going to build permanent housing for them. And that housing is going to have wraparound services. There's going to be on-site case managers that who are going to make sure that everybody there who needs mental health medication is going to have access to it, and make sure they're taking it on a regular basis so that they're stabilized. They're going to have on-site mental health counselors and drug counselors, because a lot of these individuals have drug addiction issues, right? And so this is the compassionate thing to do. But in addition to that, it's going to save taxpayer dollars, because a lot of these individuals who are chronically homeless might be causing disturbances on the street, and then they're using up a lot of our emergency resources. People are calling 911 on them all the time. So this is a compassionate thing to do. It's going to save taxpayer dollars, and we are making progress on it. Since I got into office, we secured $43 million to work on this. We've already contracted out $32 million. We're building some on the south side, some on the east side. And as soon as it's being built now, as soon as it's done being built, you're going to see progress in your neighborhood and downtown.
Thank you. Dr. Carr, in your opinion, do you think that the city needs to rethink its approach to homelessness, or allow more time for these solutions to take effect?
So the point-in-time count was just released, and there was a 5% increase in the rate of homelessness that was captured. So I would argue that may not be the progress that we're looking for. And just last week, actually, I was woken up by a homeless person in my home. And so I do think we need to really dig into this problem and make sure we're coming up with a solution to support these folks. This gentleman had serious mental health issues, and every other person that I've encountered is either actively on drugs or has mental health struggles. They've taken him to Haven for Hope multiple times, and they just leave because it's not the place they want to be. And so it's for this reason that I think the number one thing we need to do is create a housing first strategy for these folks that are on the streets. Because it's not only affecting homeowners like me, but it's also affecting our local businesses. And I've heard multiple local businesses tell me that they are sitting on the streets and just have nowhere to go. And so we have to figure out a solution for this, and that includes first and foremost having additional mental health supports, workers that are higher paid than hourly workers to actually build relationships with these folks, detox them, and get them housing.
Thank you. Okay, we have one final question for each of you, a different question for each of you. And we'll start with Councilman Bravo. During a contentious budget debate last year, it was alleged that you berated a colleague to the point of tears over a policy disagreement, and your colleagues issued you a vote of no confidence over that incident. Why do you think that they felt the need to do that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you bringing this up, and that was a bad day for me, and I regret what I said that day, and I apologized. I apologized to Councilwoman Sandoval. I apologized to my council colleagues, and I apologized to you all, my constituents. And I learned a lesson. It was a tough lesson to learn publicly, but I really learned from it, and I think I'm a better person because of it. But I never stopped working for you. I kept going to, even when I was temporarily suspended from committees, I attended those committee meetings. I was restored to those committee meetings back in November, and I've been attending them ever since. I actually have the best attendance record of any council member. But I kept working for you all, and I've worked with my council colleagues, and I've repaired those relationships, and I've worked with them on policies. They've supported my policy proposals, and I'm ready to continue to work collaboratively with you and my council colleagues.
And just to circle back on that first part of the question, why do you think that they felt the need to issue the vote of no confidence?
You have to ask them.
Dr. Carr, in the May 6th election, a police reform proposal known as Proposition A drew intense criticism from the business community and was opposed by roughly 3/4 of voters. You said at an Asian American Alliance forum in April that you supported Proposition A, but mentioned very little about the issue after that until the San Antonio report. I wasn't sure I wanted to be pegged progressive all the way, because I don't think I am. How can voters support you? Voters who support you in this election trust that you won't change your mind on issues that are important to them based on what's politically popular at the moment?
So I was able to tell voters exactly the number one issue that was most important to me in this specific proposition, and that was women's reproductive health care rights. I had a young woman today tell me, my friend has a teen pregnancy and she doesn't know what to do because she can't get an abortion. And so this is an issue that our state is facing that is incredibly important. And through the whole race, as the only woman of color in this District 1 race, I thought it was important to share that women's reproductive health care rights affects us most. And so that's what I supported during the first round. And I think it was a beautiful version of civic democracy in action. Folks came together, put a ballot measure on, and voted for it. And so it wasn't they weren't voting based on what they thought my values were, but what they thought their values were. And we support how the voters decide, because that's what democracy does. That's what good representation is. Representation that you elect into office will come to your door, hear what your issues are, and will support those issues. And that's how you've seen the campaign morph. It's because I'm listening. Back in March, I've talked to 2,000 people, and now we're over 4,000. So that's 4,000 voices that I've heard that have told me the thing they care the most about is their streets, sidewalks, and drainage system. So that's the first thing I will focus on if elected.
Do you feel that your position on Proposition A changed at all throughout the campaign?
No.
That brings us to the end. We are ready for some closing statements from the candidates. Thank you guys so much for not clapping and booing throughout this. This has made things go so quickly, and we've been able to cover so many amazing topics. We're going to do some closing statements. Dr. Kaur, would you like to go first? You have 1.5 minutes.
One of the big things that you need to have to be your city council member is the right temperament to get the job done. I have both the experience, the leadership skills, the ability to build coalitions and trust to be able to be an effective council member. And that's why I think so many of us supported me in the first round. And I know there are a lot others that want to change, because 74% of District 1 said they wanted change. And so it is our job as a city council person, and I will commit to being available if you ever absolutely need anything. If you've gotten a mailer from me, you already have my number. So you can give me a call, even if it's just, where can I go to vote? I will always be there to answer any question that you have. I am committed to the growth and the future of what District 1 in our city can be by addressing the issues that you're facing right now in your homes. And so I thank you all again for your consideration. I will work incredibly hard. I will do my job the best of my ability as your councilwoman if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bravo, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. You know, I was talking to the city manager a while back, and we were talking about how busy this council term is. The city manager's been working for the city for about 25 years now, not in other roles. And, you know, looking back, it was one of the busiest terms that he's ever experienced, right? Because we had so many things that fell in the last 2 years that weren't in a normal council term, right? Redistricting only happens every 10 years, and we did it this time. The bond only every 5 years, we did it this time. Police union union contracts only like every 5 years, we did it this time. There were so many things like that we did that fell in this term. And on top of that, we still, in the District 1 office, we worked with you, we partnered, and we got almost 100 zoning cases passed, and with 100% neighborhood approval. We've done, we've inherited messy projects and we got them back on track. We have passed reforms so that we can make sure that we can do a better job going forward. And so I really appreciate the partnership, the way we've been able to work collaboratively with everybody, including Ernest Salinas, who's supporting me over there, the former District 1 candidate, and who also was the Delview president. I appreciate the collaborative relationship, even when we're on different sides of the aisle politically. But I'm happy to be able to continue this partnership, work collaboratively with you and collaboratively with my council colleagues who have recently been signing my policy proposals and helping me get them to the city clerk. And so I ask for your vote, and I'm honored and privileged to serve this long, and I'd love to have your support.
Good job. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Kaur. Thank you, Councilman Bravo. If you heard something in here that was helpful to you, that you think your neighbors need to know, you will be able to share this whole debate with them. We will have a link on our website after tonight. I'm going to take a quick break.
through the Summers Foundation, I had so many opportunities to interact with policymakers, with lawyers, legislators.
I actually work in public finance. I would have never gone down that path. I would have never even thought of that path if it weren't for the Happiness and Success Foundation. I'll forever be indebted to my family, my parents, my husband, my daughter. It's really changed the course of my life. I think the Summers Foundation really opened up a lot of doors for me, so I was able to go to different conferences, I was able to go to different events. Those of us who have been grateful recipients, we go to work and we live our lives in our communities, knowing that we want to be the walking, living, breathing legacy of the foundation.
Happiness and Foundation is the door that opened into that world for me.
We are active in our communities and engaged in just wanting to make our little piece of home a better place.
When you hear the word government, your first thought is probably of the president or Congress. While the federal government is making big picture decisions about our nation's economy, international relations, and other aspects of our future, another branch of government is making choices that more immediately affect us, the local government. The roads we drive on, the water we drink, the schools we send our kids to, the construction of new buildings, the emergency services we depend on. These are a few of the many ways our local government directly impacts our lives. When we say local, what do we mean? Well, there are a few layers to it. On a larger scale, there's the state government. Then there's both the county and municipal or city government. In Bexar County, the largest municipal government is San Antonio. A few of the largest local municipalities include Alderete Heights, Leon Valley, Castle Hills, Balcones Heights, Windcrest, and Olmos Park. The local government is designed to reflect the federal government structure, meaning we have elected officials who are supposed to make decisions based on the best interest of the people. The good news is, as citizens, there are plenty of avenues for us to engage and participate in San Antonio's government. Many of the local boards and departments that run the city offer opportunities for all San Antonians to share their opinions and ideally influence policy.
Good evening and welcome back. If everyone could please take their seats for our second debate of the evening for the runoff election for District 7 Council. Please take your seats at the back. Awesome. Please come on in. For those of you that have just joined us, my name is Angie Mock. I'm the publisher and CEO of the San Antonio Report. We are so glad you are here for this important conversations in these two council districts. And I gotta say, give yourself a round of applause. Y'all were a great first audience for District 1 today. I didn't have to do one thing to whip anybody in shape, so that's really awesome. I just want to say before I introduce our moderator and she will introduce the runoff candidates tonight, thank you so much. Like, again, community civic engagement is at the very core of the San Antonio Report and what we do. It is so important to get everyone engaged in our local politics and our local government. It's free, you know, events like this are free, our publication is free, we'll never be behind a paywall, but it costs money. So if you appreciate what we do and become a member, no amount is too small, it just matters so much. That you really care about, that's local. So, welcome to moderate our second debate of the evening is our editor-in-chief, Lee Munsell.
Glenn, you're gonna get kicked out. Thanks, guys. We're really glad you're here for this conversation we're about to have tonight, and thank you for coming to the District 1 conversation as well as the District 7 debate. It's really important to do these events, as Angie said. We had such a great audience in the first debate, so I assume it's gonna stay that way. So just keep in mind, please don't applaud during the debate. Save your applause until after the debate. But we really want to spend some time with the candidates. My name is Lee Munsell. I'm the editor-in-chief of the San Antonio Report, and it's my honor to be your moderator tonight. And I want to invite to the stage our District 7 candidates. Marina Alderete Gavito grew up in District 7. She received a master's degree in corporate finance from St. Mary's University and an MBA from DePaul University. Over her career in the technology sector, she has worked in management positions at Rackspace and USAA. Most recently, she served as executive director of SA Digital Connects, a public-private partnership focused on addressing the digital divide in San Antonio. She lives in Woodlawn Lake. You can applaud here, but this is the Now, Dan Rossiter grew up in Houston and graduated with a degree in computer science from UTSA. He spent the past decade developing transportation technology at the Southwest Research Institute. He served on the City of San Antonio's Streets, Bridges, and Sidewalks Community Bond Committee for the 2022-2027 municipal bond. He lives in Thunderbird Hills, where he has served as the Neighborhood Association president before. You can applaud here as well. Now, our 45-minute District 7 debate will function the same way as the District 1 debate that you just saw. Each candidate will get equal time, 1 minute and 30 seconds, to answer questions from the moderator, as well as 1 minute to answer any moderator follow-ups. As needed, candidates will be awarded a 1-minute response or rebuttal in the case of a specific criticism or attack by either candidate at the discretion of the moderator. Please do not abuse this. The town hall style debate format is meant to be informative. I also ask attendees in the room to hold your applause. Do not applaud during the debate. We have very limited time today for the candidates to answer these questions. We flipped a coin to see who would go first on opening statements, and Mr. Rossiter won. Mr. Rossiter has elected to go second, so we're going to kick off with an opening statement, 1 minute and 30 seconds from Marina Alderete Gavito.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much to the San Antonio Report, and thank you to all of you all for being here. I'm so excited. We had a great campaign for May 6th election. I started block walking since January. And throughout this campaign, we earned the trust and support of over 7,000 residents in District 7. We looked at a precinct breakdown analysis, and neighbors throughout District 7 came together to support my candidacy. We won over 95% of the precincts. We feel really good. We have strong momentum going into this race. And I often use the analogy, most of you all who know me well, know I'm a marathon runner. I'm at mile 23 of a marathon, and we have no other choice but to finish this race strong. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Now let's go to a 1 minute and 30 second opening statement from Dan Rossiter.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the San Antonio Report for hosting this amazing opportunity for the District 7 voters to really get a up close and personal view of their options for leadership here in District 7. Back in January 18 of this year, which feels like an eternity ago, I filed for my candidacy for District 7 for one reason, because we need to get to work. We have $5 billion in deficits in physical infrastructure across this city, and a council that seems very distracted by issues that are not directly relevant to their residents and what they need to be doing. We need to fix our streets, we need to fix our drainage, and we need to get to work. I'm proud to be the only candidate that brings a decade of experience doing exactly that, serving state departments of transportation across the nation, building safer, better roads, and serving my community right here in San Antonio, where during my time leading Thunderbird Hills neighborhood, we got a 10-acre park created. We got road safety improvements implemented, not once, but twice around schools in the neighborhood where kids are walking home from school every day. That's the kind of work we need to be focused on, and that is what I'm committed to. I am also the only candidate to quit my job. Meanwhile, my opponent continues to work on the taxpayer dollar. And that is unacceptable. If nothing else, it is surely unethical, and it may even be illegal. I am here to fight for you and commit fully to the residents of District 7. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to give you a minute to respond. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yes, I am heavily employed as a strategic advisor to SA Digital Connects, and I will also say that my opponent does still own properties all throughout the city, so you still have a job, you still have income, so I do think it's a little misleading for you to say that you quit your job to fully focus on residents, because that's not true.
Okay, well, I think I need to
we're good. All right, you guys are jumping ahead, but yeah, we'll do one more minute to you, Mr. Rossiter.
So absolutely. So I own rental properties that net me $20,000 annually. I have operated that while working full-time at Southwest Research for 5 years. It is not my full-time job. It generates revenue well below the poverty line. And I'm proud to have tenants in my rental properties that have chosen over and over again to re-rent with me, including the vast majority of my rental units being occupied by different members of the same family, because over and over again they decided they wanted to live in a home that I was managing, because I'm a decent human being that looks out for their best interests and takes care of them, is regularly lenient on late fees, etc. So I'm very proud of the work that I do providing homes for folks around this city. Thank you.
Thank you both. Since you both are jumping ahead, so will I. You each have very extensive backgrounds in tech, and each of you stepped away from your public policy jobs, Mr. Rossiter at the Southwest Research Institute and Mrs. Gavito at the SA Digital Connects, in terms of your day-to-day position, to campaign for this opening on the council. Anna Sandoval, your predecessor, whoever wins this seat, cited the low pay afforded to council members as a reason behind her stepping down. If elected, how do you plan to make it work on a job that pays roughly $45,000 per year? Will you keep any second jobs while doing the District 7 role? Let's go to Ms. Gavito first.
Yeah. So I am fortunate enough to come from a dual income household that can afford me the opportunity to serve my community. I am so proud to have the support of my husband. Before I jumped into this race, him and I took a trip and said, hey, can we do this? And we decided that we can. He knows that I can do this, and I'm extremely proud of it. And I'm extremely proud to still be part of SA Digital Connects. I will clarify that I have already written a letter of resignation so that should I win on June 10th, I resign immediately. And if I don't, they want me to stay back as executive director, which I think is a testament to my work. So I'm extremely proud of both of that.
Great. Do you need me to repeat the question? Will you keep any second jobs? Will you do the council position?
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Absolutely. So I'm proud to have worked a full-time job, which generally meant 60 plus hours a week at Southwest Research, while continuing to manage these rental properties across the city. So I'm well equipped to provide the level of service that District 7 residents deserve, while continuing to provide the much needed housing for folks living on shoestring budgets who need the services that I'm providing. So yes, I will continue to operate both, as I have for the last 5 years. But I didn't keep the safety net of going back to Southwest Research. I made it clear that I was finished there and that this was my priority going forward. So that's, I think that's an important distinction to make here. I am fully committed to the residents of District 7. I'm fully committed to this campaign. I am fully committed to fighting for every resident in District 7 to get them the results they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now, this is an open seat, and both of you are candidates. I don't think you'll disagree with me, who are very different than the predecessor, Anna Sandoval, who's a 3-term council member who resigned in January. She was known for her progressive approach to representing her West Side district, as well as her emphasis on environmental issues like climate and air quality and housing justice in District 7. Sandoval was reelected with 68% of the vote in 2019 and 71% of the vote in 2021. What is your pitch to a voter who shared those priorities and believes she was doing a great job? Let's go to Ms. Gavito first on this.
So Councilwoman Sandoval was my councilwoman, and I agreed with 90% of the decisions she made. I think one of the things that I've heard loud and clear from residents across District 7 is that she did take the time to earn trust and support. And a lot of residents, clearly over 7,000 residents, twice that of my opponent, have seen the same with me. They see someone they can trust, they see someone who takes the time to listen to them, and they see someone who they can support. So I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud to make personal connections with residents all across District 7, and I'm going to continue the great work that Councilwoman Anna Sandoval did.
We'll do a really quick follow-up on that, just 30 seconds on that. What do you expect to make your priorities in the role? Will they look like Councilwoman Sandoval's?
Yeah, I think that one of the differences with Councilwoman Sandoval and I is that I do have a business background. And so I'm going to be focusing on public safety because I have knocked on over 2,500 doors. I've started block walking since January. And from all across District 7, I hear about safety, safety, safety. One of the things I also really want to focus in on, and Dr. Sukh touched on it, is communication from the District 7 office. We need to meet residents where they are, whether they consume a newsletter, whether they consume email, whatever the case is, we need to meet residents are in terms of communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's go with the original question back to Mr. Rossiter. How do you pitch a voter who shared Councilwoman Sandoval's priorities and is looking to you as a potential successor?
Sure. So I think while we maybe look at things from a different lens, we share a lot of the same values, Anna and I. For example, I am endorsed by the Sierra Club. During my first 4 years as president of Thunderbird Hills neighborhood, I was successful in securing 10 acres of parkland, the same amount of parkland that Anna Sandoval secured during her first 4 years in office. And I think that's very notable, given that I did that as a neighborhood president and not as a council member. Obviously, my priorities are first and foremost infrastructure. That means roads, that means drainage. This is what is actually killing people right now, and so we have to prioritize that. That has to be number one. Similarly for public safety, which in my mind goes hand in hand. Some of y'all may know the reason I came into this race in the first place was largely catalyzed by a gentleman by the name of John Farley, whose home was hit by a drunk driver, nearly killing his granddaughter and his wife. Because the city did not take action for 10 years, knowing that there was an intersection that did not work and it was chronically plagued with accidents. This is not acceptable. We need to be proactively addressing these known safety concerns throughout the city so that folks can be safe in their own home. We need to be responsibly driving development that does not put people's life in danger. That is my priority. But that does not come with the exclusion of parks. That does not come at the exclusion of animal care services, where I'm proud to have gone and spoken with the board at their meeting just last week. We can do all of these things together, but it'll have to be together, you and me. Thank you.
Thank you. We solicited questions from our audience in the weeks preceding this debate and the District 1 debate as well, and I wanted to read you one from District 7 resident Kyle Adams. San Antonio residents overwhelmingly voted no on Proposition A. Were there any individual measures in Proposition A that you would vote for if they stood alone and were not grouped in with the others? And just to give a little cheat sheet for everyone's memory, the top lines of that were abortion decriminalization, marijuana decriminalization, banning the use of police chokeholds, banning no-knock warrants, expanding cite and release, and creating a justice director at City Hall. Let's start first with Mr. Rossiter. Which of those things would you support if they stood alone?
Sure. So I think the biggest challenge with the Justice Charter came down to jurisdiction, as well as some fundamental lack of understanding for how these things need to work to be effective policy. So for example, a woman's right to choose, I fully support that. However, that's a state level measure. That's something I'm more than happy to advocate for, but that's not something we as a municipality have the authority to implement. Similarly with marijuana use, I support the legalization and taxing of marijuana. However, again, municipalities do not have the authority to do this. That's something that was made very clear by the city attorney early on in all of this. I think a justice director would be a phenomenal idea, and I would love to support that. However, it would have to be with the removal of a requirement precluding someone with a law enforcement background from holding that position. Without that background, how in the world can we expect someone to put forward thoughtful, meaningful policy that is likely to actually affect change? I do not believe that is possible. So I'm fully supportive of someone outside of SAPD driving those initiatives. However, it cannot be someone without a law enforcement background. In terms of chokeholds and no-knock warrants, obviously those have been part of SAPD policy for many years now. I do think there are opportunities to refine our no-knock warrant policies. I think that we should be putting together some more minute details in regard to no-knock warrants and when they're executed to eliminate the likelihood of kids being home as well as senior citizens who are not the target of those warrants. So thoughtful policy, working with SAPD and the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. To remind the audience, the justice director at City Hall not having a law enforcement background was part of the wording of Proposition A, I believe, as it existed on the ballot. So we'll embed that in the question for you, Ms. Gavito. If you could explain, again, for the top lines, they'd be abortion decriminalization, marijuana decriminalization, banning the use of police chokeholds, banning no-knock warrants, expanding cite and release, and creating a justice director at City Hall. Which of those would you support if they stood alone?
Yeah, so I do stand with women's rights. I am a woman, and I firmly believe in standing with women's rights. Decriminalization of low levels of marijuana, I think, is something that we need to explore. Banning the use of chokeholds and no-knock warrants. Again, this is currently in police training. I do think that there's areas of opportunity for it to be refined. For instance, not using no-knock warrants when kids might be at home, and so I do think that there's opportunity there. I was opposed to the cite and release. Right now, cite and release exists today, and 80% of cases, officers did have the discretion and they did ticket instead of sending someone to jail. I think that micromanaging our police officers and telling them that the ballot language says you're required to issue a citation instead of jail, then that really tripped the justice director was our police officers, yes, but not necessarily someone with no law enforcement experience.
Okay, I'm going to ask a moderator follow-up, which is a 1-minute follow-up on that. And as you mentioned, Ms. Gavito, the business community balked at the expansion of cite and release, which the city like that to
take away officers' discretion to do their job. We cannot micromanage our
Rossiter.
In this community for time, and see and recur.
And specifically how it relates to neighborhood associations and how they operate within the city, as well as the power that they hold. After an Ingram Hills Neighborhood Association forum that was very focused on crime and Proposition A, one of the attendees told the San Antonio Report this: District 7 is not only just these homeowners, it consists of houseless folks, of refugees that are stuck in apartment complexes that are run by slumlords right down the road. That is also the community, and to see these politicians pander to just a bunch of homeowners was really sad. How do you plan to balance the neighborhood with the needs of renters, apartment residents, and even people who are homeless or living in the district.
48% of District 7 residents population that in this must be in addition to homeowners. All 150,000 folks who live in the district. I know firsthand the value needed in the community, including 4 apartment complexes. I'll shout out on the president. Because the reality is, I stand saying it is not possible to do the job without collaboration. They're simply too big, which is a whole different topic about increasing the number of council districts, but that's a topic for another day probably. But I think it's critical that we collaborate with these folks, that we understand what is most important in these regional areas at the micro level. So at the macro level, we can appropriately prioritize dollars and address what is most important across the district. So neighborhood's important, but certainly not the only voice. Thank you.
I'm going to follow up on that really quick because I feel like there's more to dig in on. So for 1 minute, let's dig in on that. So specifically, how do you expect to do that? If neighborhood leaders are all meeting in a room together and you can go find them there, how specifically do you plan to communicate with people who are renting within your district?
Absolutely. So I think it's critical that we have meetings that involve more than just neighborhood associations. So as a founding member of the Renter Solutions Housing Commission Subcommittee, I'm intimately familiar with hosting opportunities for renters to meet with city folks and have their needs heard. And during that time, it was very clear there are a lot of needs in that community that are not being addressed fully today. And so I think the creation of that subcommittee was a great first step. I think it was one of the good things that Robert Trevino lobbied for back when he was on council. However, it's only the first step, right? We've got information, what's not working. The Tenants' Bill of Rights is a great step, but let's be real, it's a very small step towards addressing inequities that may exist between renters and homeowners in this city. And we as a city, it is our job to represent all of these residents, not just the homeowners, period.
Thank you. Ms. Gavito, again, the question was, how do you plan to balance the needs of neighborhood leaders with people who are perhaps renters or living in a district temporarily?
Yeah. So I served as vice president of the Woodlawn Lake Neighborhood Association. I'm extremely proud of that. I do think that, you know, as soon as I've filed my candidacy, I reached out to the neighborhood associations. I wanted to go meet and learn their concerns. I think that neighborhood associations are the lifeblood of our community. They gather so much information. They're the eyes and the ears of the District 7 office. We need each other to partner, and we need each other to make District 7 thrive. So I think that we need to form a strong partnership. I am proud to have a lot of the backing from a lot of the neighborhood associations, people I've worked with that have a testament to my work. I do also want to call out a specific meeting that was held by the Monticello Park Neighborhood Association. There was some safety concerns in the area, 2 really horrific cases, and they called the police officers to have a meeting with them. And it was an interesting meeting because while we were talking about these horrific cases, one of the things that I heard from neighborhood associations that I hear loud and clear to this day is how important our community safe officers are to each neighborhood association. The community safe officers are there handing out their number, letting them know what is going on in the neighborhood. There's a really good, strong partnership formed between our community safe officers and our neighborhood associations. And I think that is also a partnership that we need to harness and continue to grow. So fully supportive of the neighborhood associations, proud to have earned their support, and also want to be working with them closely because, again, they are the lifeblood of our community.
Great. I'm going to ask you the same follow-up I asked Mr. Rossiter, which is how specifically do you plan to connect with people who are renters or maybe haven't, signed up to join an association, but they are in your district and you do represent them? How do you plan to do that practically?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned firsthand is that while neighborhood associations are the lifeblood, you go to their meetings, They do represent just a portion of District 7. One of the things that I've learned along this campaign trail is how much I love block walking, you know, and you get so much by being at someone's front door, listening to their concerns. You know, we've had a resident had me drawings of all the Texas native trees, you know, or, you know, another resident had poems that he had written to his late wife. And you just, I mean, the only bad thing with me and block walking is that I can spend all day at someone's door, and if they let me, you know. And so I think, you know, that is something that I've committed to continuing. If elected, I'm going to continue to block walk. I'm going to continue to hear their concerns. I'm going to be at community events. I'm going to be accessible to all residents in District 7.
Thank you. We reached out to Rosie Castro, who's currently sitting in the District 7 seat, and asked her what to ask the candidates. She sent in this question about your loyalties as a council member. If you must decide a zoning case in which the zoning commission and city staff have recommended approval, but the residents in the surrounding area do not want a zoning change on that particular project, what steps would you take to base your vote? Let's go to Ms. Gavito first on this one.
Yeah, I think that there's a great example happening in District 7 now with the Prue Bend case. Basically, it's two neighborhoods. There's an 11-acre lot in the middle that's kind of connected to Opie Schnabel Park. A lot of those residents thought that this was continuation of parkland. They had no idea it was private property. It got sold. It is now under developers' control, and these residents were upset. And what they did is they reached out to me. One of them actually reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to come have coffee with me, walk the land, you know, see why we're so attached to it." And I did. I took her up on it. I listened to those neighbors' concerns. They had me over for a follow-up meeting where we sat in one of their backyards and listened to them. I think one of the things, actually one of the first pieces of feedback I heard while block walking is that residents feel that with zoning changes, they feel that they're kind of a checkbox at the end of the process. And I want to change that. I think that neighbors and neighborhood associations' input should be paramount in a zoning change request process. Neighbors and neighborhood associations should be brought in as soon as a zoning change request is made so that they know what's happening in their community. Oftentimes, I think zoning cases get so messy when there's so much back and forth. There's so much messiness. Oh, they said they were going to send us this plan. We never saw it. They said they were going to send a drainage study. We never saw it. Then it's set up to fail. But again, when we bring neighbors and neighborhood associations into the process at the very beginning, and they can have a say on what's going on in their community, I think that's the key to success.
Thank you. Let's give a minute 30 to Mr. Rossiter on that as well. Again, Rosie Castro's question about how would you practically balance the needs of the people you represent with the needs of city staff if they're recommending a zoning change.
I love this question. Thank you, Rosie, if you're listening. My loyalty, quite simply, is to the residents of District 7. What that means on a case-by-case basis is going to vary. Sometimes that's going to mean I need to side with the developers because they own the land and what they're doing is appropriate for that area. Sometimes that's going to mean I'm going to side with the neighborhoods because they're right. This is not appropriate for that area, and maybe the zoning commission got it wrong. They're human. They can get it wrong. City staff can get it wrong too. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to I cannot be bought. While my opponent has received big dollars from developers across this city, while my opponent has gotten big dollars from big businesses and PACs with shady money all around this city, I'm proud to not be bought receiving $20, $50, $100 from folks who want to see a better District 7, who want to see a better tomorrow, and want to see the right candidate in office who can make that happen and has a proven track record fighting to get those results. That is why I will not be bought, and I will fight exclusively for what's right for District 7 residents.
Ms. Gavito, I believe there's a chance for a rebuttal on your campaign donations.
Absolutely. I'm going to explain how City Council fundraising works. So you can only get a max contribution of $500. So whether someone gives you $5 or $500, that's the max that anybody can give you. A resident can give you only $500. A business can only give you $500. I am not going to apologize for working my tail off and fundraising $85,000 while my opponent raised $4,000. That is just a testament to my hard work. I woke up every morning, I had those meetings, I made those phone calls, I connected with people via text. And I outworked my opponent. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm proud of every single contribution that I have made, I have been received, because you know what? It's people's investment in me. It's people's investment in my campaign, and I'm proud of it.
Okay, we're going to move on because I don't think it's exactly a rebuttal to, you know, you can't quantify hard work necessarily, but we won't do a rebuttal on that. So let's move on to a question I have for both of you, which is that, Mr. Rossiter, you own several rental properties throughout the city, as you said. Ms. Gavito, your family has been heavily involved in the city's redevelopment of Woodlawn Lake, where you now own a home. All things we know, but I would just ask you to explain, because this is a good place to do it, how can voters trust that you'll use city resources such as bond projects, street repairs, and other funds to address the city's most pressing needs and for the betterment of the entire District 7 community? Let's go to Ms. Gavito first on this one.
Yeah, so the question is, how can
voters trust that you'll equitably distribute bond project money and other things like that when you have personal ties to certain locations in the city, as do both of you?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a resident of District 7 to do that. So, you know, my family and I chose to move back to the Woodlawn Lake area because that's my home. Chose to invest in the area. Again, not going to apologize for that. I think one of the things that I've been doing since I've been block walking is creating a backlog or a database of everybody's concern all throughout District 7. So whether if it's Ms. Hernandez telling me her sidewalk is in disrepair because a tree has uprooted it, or you know, someone saying, hey, St. Cloud, they're speeding too much, or a drainage problem. I have a backlog or a database or a list of all of those concerns. Some of them I'm hearing about again and again, and so, you know, to me this is basic product management, which I have experience in doing. Is you take all the data points, you prioritize what's needed the most, and then you fund it accordingly.
Mr. Rossiter?
Yeah, no, I love this question. So first of all, I only own a single property in District 7, and I'm committed to not acquiring any additional property within the District 7 boundary while I'm in office. But beyond that, it comes down to a very simple philosophy that council and the city manager has talked about for a long time, but has really failed to execute on, and that's data-driven investment in this community. We have quantifiable numbers for every bad road in this entire city. It begs the question, why is council mucking about with which roads get fixed first? Should that not be a purely algorithmic decision based on where the most need is? So, with that in mind, back when I sat on the 2022 to 27 bond committee, I fought to change the algorithm for how we invest $100 million every bond cycle in F-rated streets, and successfully secured that council adopting the proposal I first made to change that algorithm to not unfairly include the total lane miles within a district, but instead only account for the F-rated lane miles throughout that district, ensuring that it was equitably distributed across the city. I have a proven track record of driving data-driven investment in our community, the only candidate with that background, and I'm very proud of that, and I will continue to push for data-driven investment that allows us to squeeze out the maximal value and the most fair results for everyone in District 7 and in San Antonio more broadly, because the reality is these policies affect the whole city. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, one of the questions I have, which we already touched on a little bit, was the Prue Road redevelopment project, and we've talked about it from the neighborhood side. We've talked about it about get out in front of it, make sure neighborhood leaders know sooner about things happening. But I want to approach this from the environmental side. Do you think the city needs to be more proactive in acquiring land that has value as natural space? And let's go to Mr. Rossiter first on this one.
Yes. So this is something I'm proud to have a long-standing track record of from my time back in Thunderbird Hills. Working with that developer to have 10 acres of land deeded over from the broader 40-acre parcel to be developed in order to create parkland within the district. And yes, we should have bought that parcel years ago. We should have bought it years ago when no one was trying to develop it, when it was dirt cheap, because it's terrible land to build on. The topology here is just going to be really expensive for anyone to build on, and it's going to really minimize the amount of profits you can make. So yeah, the city certainly should have bought it. Hindsight is 2020. Obviously, we can't necessarily fix that right now, although I would certainly be happy to entertain, once it's elected, the opportunity of purchasing if it's the right price, and if the budget is available to do it. But more broadly, to answer the question, absolutely. If there's opportunities like this where folks are already seeing it as a great addition to an existing parkland, or if there's a lack of parkland in that area and there's land that we can cost effectively pick up, 100% we should be pursuing that. Particularly as population grows, our ratio of parkland to people should stay consistent or ideally maybe even increase. And as our population grows by 1 million folks over the next 10 years, we should probably be adding to our parkland commensurate to how we're adding to our drainage, commensurate to how we're adding to our roads, commensurate to how we're adding to our power grid. It's all part of the same overall infrastructure that we need to be investing in.
Thank you. Ms. Gavito, could you answer that one? Do you believe the city should be more proactive in acquiring land that has value as natural space?
Absolutely. I think that we need to be bullish on protecting our green spaces. Green spaces are so healing for so many reasons. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, we chose a home right next to a park with a body of water. I understand the Pooh Band residents' concern because this park is beautiful. I mean, they've seen bobcats and, all these kinds of things on the green space. I also think that we need to look at it from a different lens. I live closer to downtown, and we're seeing rows of just empty, vacant buildings. And so I'm always kind of scratching my head, why aren't we developing on those spaces instead of taking up our green spaces? So yes, I'm going to be bullish on protecting green spaces.
Thank you. There was a little bit of discussion of this earlier, but I'm curious because it's been in the news again today. In the wake of a tragic dog mauling earlier this year, we now know that a large portion of the complaints in the city receives stem from a relatively small number of addresses. And specifically, I think this is an interesting one for the two of you, because how might you use your backgrounds in data and technology to address the city's dangerous dog problem, as well as the stray animal problem while we're at it? Let's go to Ms. Gavito first.
Yeah, so I have an interesting story I'd like to share with this. Probably over a month and a half ago now, I was just starting my run at Woodlawn Lake, and I was running with my dog Kanda, and she's on one of those leashes that's connected to my waist. So it's kind of one of those, if she goes, I go, type thing. And we had just started the loop around Woodlawn Lake, and all of a sudden we see 5 or 6 wild dogs. And, you're thinking, oh my God, they're gonna start trouble. One dog tried to start trouble, and me and this lady were able to shoo him away. And so I immediately pick up the phone and call 311, and I had run a half mile, so I'm on the other side of Woodlawn Lake, and then we see 3 more wild dogs. And I'm still on hold, not surprisingly, for 311, and finally they answered, and I said, hey, this park is packed, full of people, and there are like 10 wild dogs here. Y'all need to come get it. So she's taking down the ticket, marking it as critical, and then she tells me, okay, we'll be there in 1 to 3 business days. Like, 1 to 3 business days? Like, do I just tell these dogs to sit? Like, what is going on? And so I want to use my business experience, my business skill set, and my project management experience to look into ACS's operations. They have a $21 million budget. And before we allocate more, I want to make sure that they're making an effective use of their dollars. Sending someone out 2 days from that incident does no one any good, because guess what? Those dogs are probably causing trouble 2 miles down the road. And I will say the hardest part about that story is I was on a morning run early last week, and that second pack of 3 dogs that I saw were still at the park. So again, I want to use my business experience to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are working efficiently and effectively for us.
Thank you. I do want to toss in, Mr. Rossiter, you get to answer that one.
Okay. So I'm proud to have the distinction of 2 months ago putting forward concrete policy recommendations in the aftermath of that horrific mauling of that elderly couple. Unfortunately, as a municipality, we're limited in the level of authority we have. The state owns the breadth of the jurisdiction as it relates to handling animals, particularly because the state currently classifies them as property. Whether you think that's right or not, it is the current state of things. However, we put forward a policy recommendation, which I'm committed to on day 1 in office, beginning work to implement, which looks at how we make sure that folks have everything at their disposal to make sure that they file the right paperwork so that the state can take the right actions to take those dogs out of that bad household. Because the reality is it's not the dog's fault, right? The owner is at fault. In 99.999% of those cases, that owner was not responsible in how they handled that animal. So we need to get those animals out of those homes. And again, jurisdictionally, we have limited control, but we can make sure they have access to a notary at their front door. We can make sure that they know exactly what forms they need to be filling out. and we can make sure that we're being proactive and encouraging them to go through those processes. I did address the ACS board back just last week. Had a chance to speak to our District 7 representative and meet with a lot of the rescue community that attended that meeting. Fundamentally, we need to update the 2026 plan, the master plan for ACS. It is insane to me that we do not have an up-to-date plan to drive our path forward. We need to enhance our spay neuter programs, access, as well as education, so that folks know why they need to get that. And that's the root of everything related to all of our painful issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna just hit all this one very quickly with about 30 seconds each, since we talked about this issue more broadly in terms of Anna Sandoval talking about council member pay and it being too low and perhaps being one of the reasons she decided to resign. This is Mayor Nirenberg's last term in office, often the time to address changes to the city charter like mayor and city council pay as well as city manager pay. So in 30 seconds or less, let's go with Ms. Gavito first. Would you support an effort to increase pay for each of these roles?
Yeah, I think city council pay is entirely too low for the job that you need to do, and so yeah, I would support that.
Okay. What about the city manager?
And the city manager won't.
City manager, council, and mayor pay.
Yes, I also think that our city manager is the CEO of our city and needs to be paid accordingly.
Mr. Rossiter, 30 seconds.
Sure. I will add to that our CPS Energy CEO, which I think also we need to revisit the cap there as well. I think more broadly, if we want to be able to attract national talent to serve as the CEO both for our city and for our energy provider, we need to provide a pay scale that's commensurate to what folks are paying other places. The CPS Energy scale is ridiculous, as is the city manager. That's a factual statement based on looking at equivalent cities and equivalent energy providers across the nation. Separately, council, I myself gave up a $150,000 a year job to pursue a job that pays $45,000 a year. If we want to attract talent, we have to increase pay.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening so patiently through this debate. I didn't get to all of my questions, but I'm really glad that we had a chance to have this conversation tonight. Again, if you remember, we did a coin flip before the debate to decide on closing statements, who goes first and who goes second. And so Ms. Gavito is going to start us off.
Well, thank you again for being here. I'm not running against Stan Rossiter. I'm running for the office of District 7. I'm running because I care deeply about our community. I'm running because I want to use my business experience and community leadership experience to serve the residents of District 7. I am proud of the results that we have. I'm proud that 7,000 people and more have endorsed my candidacy. And I look forward for them to coming back out and earning more people's trust and support. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for listening to my platform, and I hope you all share it accordingly. Thanks so much.
Mr. Rossiter, your closing statement.
First of all, thank you all for coming out. It means the world that you're taking the time to educate yourself and make an informed decision when you go to the ballot box. I'm running for the people of District 7, every single one of them. Like I said, I quit my job in February. I've developed concrete policy recommendations, and I have a proven track record delivering actual results for people on the ground nationally and right here in San Antonio, including moving $100 million to better serve folks with the worst roads in San Antonio. We need someone with proven ability to lead, proven ability to deliver results, and the dedication we all deserve. This is going to take all of us. I'm not claiming to be able to fix it, right? It's going to take all of us together, collaborating, working with the neighborhoods, working with folks in rental properties across the city, working with everyone to make sure that we can build a better district for you, the residents of District 7. I'm committed to that fight, as I have been for the past 5 months now. Has it really been that long? 5 months. 5 months and counting. I'm committed to that fight, and I hope you're committed to joining me in that fight so that we can work together to build the district that we all deserve to have. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you, audience. You may now thank the candidates for their time. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to wrap up now, so thank you so much for being here. It's not a long wrap up. We're the San Antonio Report. We're a nonprofit newsroom here in San Antonio, and we really care about civic engagement. That's why we do these conversations. They're so important. And so get out and vote on June 10th. And if you heard something today, Andrea had a great note earlier. If you heard something today in this conversation that was valuable, send it to your neighbors. They need to hear it too. District 7 deserves good representation. And so thank you for your participation today. Thank you. I'm not sure I know early votes off the top of my